What the Mum podcast. My name is Maria Newman and I will be your host. Every mum to be knows that as soon as she becomes a mum, her world will change forever. Everyone is keen to give you advice based on their own experiences. Other mums delight in sharing their horror stories so that new mums are better prepared for what might happen. The lack of sleep, feeling exhausted most of the time, living in bodies with even more wobbly bits and never having any privacy. But everyone's story is unique. Everyone's experience is personal. On this podcast, I will be sharing real stories told by mums like you and I about their experience of motherhood and how life changes when you become a mum. This podcast is about showing you that you're not alone. We may not be in the same boat, but we are experiencing a similar storm. I hope these stories will inspire you to do what you want, be who you want to be. Anything is possible if you really want it and if it is really important to you. If you want to find out more about me and who I am, check out my website, mummyinabreak.co.uk. However, for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. During this podcast series, I will be interviewing 6 awesome women who will be sharing with us their own stories. My guest today is Alison, who enables women to make the right choices to manage their physical and emotional menopause symptoms and helps men to understand what menopause is. But she's also a mum who is enjoying the next stage of her mum journey. Thank you for joining me today, Alison.
Yeah, great to be here, Maria.
So, Alison, first of all, tell us a bit about who you are so we can get a sense of Alison, the individual.
Yeah, wow, thanks. So it was interesting. I was looking at this question. I was kind of thinking, what do people want to know about me? And I was just wondering, do they want to know that I'm on my 3rd husband? You know, that's quite exciting. This was the one that my mother said, oh, 3rd time lucky. I think she was keeping her fingers crossed. So I didn't plan it that way, you know, and obviously part of my journey was the fact that my children came from the 2nd husband. So obviously I've had to kind of negotiate all of that. And also my 1st husband, he had a daughter when I met him. So I've been a stepmother. I've got a partner who's a stepfather. I spent a period in the middle as a single parent. So I've done all of those many things. And yeah, as you can tell, I'm way past the menopause. It's great on the other side, guys. It's just wonderful and exciting. I'm a cat person rather than a dog person. In my 40s, I took up belly dancing. That's great. And I even led a belly dance class. And somebody, you know, people would talk to me about, you know, I could join the class and you get fit. And I'm going, it's all about the sequins. It's all about the sequins, really, belly dancing and all of that. In my 50s, I started running art exhibitions as my husband. And then somehow, a few years ago, I started a PhD looking at the role of mentoring for women entrepreneurs. And my passion is sea swimming. And in fact, I was in the sea yesterday before the weather came in. And this is the best time to go swimming because the air temperature is probably a little bit colder than the sea temperature, so it's really great. And there's a whole group of us kind of met up and just ran screaming into the sea. There was a brave guy amongst us, but of course mainly women. So yeah,
there you go. I think we get a sense of exactly who you are. You are a lady of adventure. That's who I see you as. So you are at the other end of your journey as far as being a mum is concerned. You have adult children. So tell us your story of becoming and being a mum.
Yeah, it's interesting because in a sense I was late to the party. So I had my son when I was 33. I had my daughter when I was 38. It's interesting. And in fact, I was having this conversation with my friend Anne that I run the menopause work with, and we were saying it never stops. You're always a mum. You're always a mum. It kind of goes on. It goes on. It goes through different kind of cycles. And as you can see, there they are. There's, you know, this You know, we went on a holiday, about 3 or 4 years ago, we all went on a holiday when we thought, because you don't go on holiday with your children once they're grown up, and once they leave home, they're not interested at all in anything going on holiday. And we just decided to all go on holiday, and we went to Croatia, and it was really great. And it was good to have that conversation with them as adults. So yeah, it's that whole kind of thing. So I had those two children from my second husband, and then when I was 8.5 months pregnant, my husband told me he wasn't going to be living with me anymore, and left. So I'd gone from, I thought, having it all sorted, to overnight, single parent. He left when she was 6 weeks old. I was, and you know how loopy you are when you've just had a baby anyway. So I was completely crazy for a year. And that really showed me a lot of different things about myself and what was really important in my life, and what did I really want to do. And I think and I would say, looking back and all the rest of it, I got the best part of it in the sense of, I've got my daughter, who's absolutely amazing, and now I'm living with my third husband, who's just wonderful. So things work out for the best in the end.
So let me take you back to that moment where you're having that moment where your husband says to you, we're not going to be together anymore. What were your immediate thoughts?
I think kind of a bit of disbelief, a bit of panic, and yes, a whole kind of thing of, this must not happen, this should not happen. And in a way, it was the thing that I thought, oh, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. And it was, and I survived it, and I know a lot of women kind of go through this process, and it's one of those things where you just start to realize, do you know what? This is very important. This is one of my takeaway things from motherhood. It's not necessary to do the hoovering. Just don't put all of that extra pressure on yourself. The most important things, I discovered the 80-20 rule, and it was just that thing about, because when I went back to work, I just got a big promotion before I went on maternity leave. Everything was wonderful, and then it all just kind of fell apart. And I went back and I had this really high-powered job, and I'm thinking, I'm going to do that 80%. I'm going to be a mother 80%, which only takes up 40% of my time, if you know about the 80-20 rule. So therefore I've got all this time in the middle where I can sleep, and kind of just recuperate. And so yeah, when you're the only person, when you're the double parent, we should be called double parents, actually. They're not single parents, because you're doing both. And it was, and I had no family support around me at the time, and I just had to, pull myself up by my bootstraps and continue. But it did really show me the importance of your friends, and also asking for help. And all of that, because I'd always been the strong person that everybody had said, oh right, Alison will sort it all out and the rest of it. And suddenly I wasn't. My brain was just completely vacant. It had gone on holiday. It's like that when Ronald Reagan's brain, it was off on holiday on the beach. It was having a very nice time. It certainly wasn't functioning here.
So what do you think got you through that time so that you could be calm and continue?
Yeah, I think I kind of did. It was absolutely finding support from the other women around me. It was really cutting down the things that were being done around the house. And I think I just remember when Ella, the childminder at some point said to me, she said, this is when they'd first started supermarket deliveries, and she kind of went, oh, I noticed you had the Tesco delivery van outside your house last night, And I went, yeah, because what happens is I put it down online, somebody else goes around the supermarket for an hour, so I don't have to. Then they bring it to my house, and at that point they took it into your kitchen, and then unloaded it from the boxes. And I kind of went, and it costs you £5. What on earth? Why would you not do that? And it's those kind of things of somehow feeling that other people kind of saying, oh, that you're not as capable. You're not, oh, for goodness sake. It's just kind of those kind of things that you realize. And things like, I like sitting in the garden, but I'm not a gardener. So I think at some point I just decided, you know, and the gardeners at that point, it was something ridiculous, like £8 an hour. And I'm going, I want to sit in the garden. I don't want to be gardening in the garden. I want to be able to sit in it and enjoy it. So let's have the gardener. But the garden was much more important than the cleaner, that was for sure. Didn't have a cleaner, just let the house go to rack and ruin, and we just lived with dust.
I love that basically what I'm interpreting from what you've said is life all of a sudden had a perspective and you realize what's important. Whereas how I view life when, you know, we become a mum for some reason, and it's not written down anywhere, but as mums, I think we decide that we do have to do everything and everything has to fall on our shoulders when clearly, exactly like you said, Alison, that is not the case. And I, you know, it'd be great if you could go back in time and find out exactly when things changed, because that hasn't always been the way. You know, when we didn't travel to different cities and we just grew up in our village, then the whole village helped to raise the children. You know, you were a proper community, and you helped each other out.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because my mother was intensely house proud. She was intensely house proud. She was absolutely obsessed with the bloody laundry. You know, any thought of, you know, if I were, you know, when I was at university coming home, if I wanted to bring a friend, oh, but what about the laundry? And I'm going, oh, how welcoming would that be? Anyway, but it's just like, so for me, it's quite a difference. I mean, I think my sister still. There was one point I think I went and caught her. She used to iron her husband's underpants. I'm going, what a pointless activity. Actually, ironing is a pointless activity anyway. You know, what we got husband for? Much better. So that's it. So it's just like, but that whole thing of having to be perfect and to demonstrate, well, to who? And I do like these kind of these adverts when they have the guy, when they started to realize, you know, companies start to realize that there are men living in the house as well, and they could possibly perform some of these tasks. But then the men are shown being a bit incompetent, and then the women have to come in and rescue them. And I'm going, oh, please, you know, adults. You know, I always say, people said to me, in terms of Rod, it's like, you know, oh, you've trained him well. I went, no, he came completely self-trained. He had this understanding. He knew how to work the washing machine. He knew how to work the Hoover. You know, he kind of, you know, he understood that when you ran out of things, you went to the shop and you bought more of them. It was all possible. And you're going, that's kind of an adult relationship, isn't it? And I talk to people sometimes and they kind of go, oh, well, I can't come out because I've got the children. I'm going, well, what about their father? Isn't the father living in the house? The father's living in the house. Or if you're not, you know, if you don't want that, there are these things called babysitters. So it is like that thing of, think about you as a person that's important, because if you're keeping the whole show running, then it's important that you look after yourself.
And this is the thing, isn't it? There's, if as a mum we are insisting on being the glue that keeps everything together, then at the same time we need to also appreciate that we can't run on empty. No. And so we have to look after ourselves, but regardless of whether we're being the glue, to be honest with you, but especially if we think we're what's keeping everything together. But wouldn't it be better if we just accepted that we don't have to be the glue and we can share responsibility, and not everything that we think has to happen. And
I think the other thing to do is, I am still shocked at the number of women who seem to run around after their children and think that they're incapable of using the washing machine. I mean, I remember meeting at college a guy, I think it was the end of, it's the second term, and he was trying to work out the laundrette, and I'm going, Nick, surely you haven't been wearing the same clothes for 6 months. He went, oh no, I just go home and my mum washes it. And I'm like, I mean, at that point I vowed, if I ever came to the point of having children, but at that point I didn't want them at all, but if I ever did that and I ever had a son, there was no way I was going to bequeath him to anybody else, being so incompetent. And so when Aaron was 14, his birthday present was to be shown how to use the washing machine. And from that moment on, I did not interact with any of his clothing. Hoorah! Particularly the underpants, and didn't wash his bedding, anything. And so Ella knew when it was her 14th birthday, that was coming down the pipe. But the other thing apart from that was, one of the best things we did was, Rod and I met through a personal growth course where there was a young person's version of it, and the kids went on it, and what happened at the end of that was you sat down as a family and you made a family agreement, and you all got to express, how did you want the family to run? So, you know, the kids might say, oh, we'd like you to be more present here, or we'd like you to play football with us, or, you know, want to come to our football matches, we want to do this. So how are we supporting that? And I remember saying at that point, Rod and I were both working, and we were working, you know, we had to travel early in the morning. And I said, you know, Rod and I, we leave the house at something like 7:30, and we come back in at 6, and you say, what's for dinner? And I'm going, but you've been in the house, you know, you've got yourself home from school and you've been in the house since 3:45. So we had an agreement, and this is one of the best things about it, was that in the week we would each cook once, and Wednesday was do it yourself night. Wednesday was do it yourself, because we all had an activity. So we stocked the freezer with microwave meals, and we just put stuff in the fridge, so that was fine, they could just do that. And Ella, I think Ella might have only been, you know, maybe 9 or 10 or something. So we had a lot of baked potatoes at the beginning, but somebody else cooked them. And we showed Aaron how to make spaghetti bolognese and you know, a couple of other things. So we had a lot of spaghetti bolognese at the beginning, and then he started to realize he could experiment too. But and then they didn't have to do their chore. If they, you know, if they did cooking, they didn't have to do the washing up or the drying up. So that was a benefit. But, you know, and we just divvied it up. And I was like saying, it would be really great if, you know, and we divvied up the jobs, because I said, we're a team. You see, any family is a team. And if you want to create the conditions, guys, where you have a nice house, where you have a house to live in, and you have electricity and it's warm and all of these different things, and you have clothes, then we're all involved in getting that on the road. You know, we're bringing in the cash to pay the mortgage, but what we need is our support team as well. So, and I think that was one of the most important things that we did to actually, but also the children were then involved, because we're like saying, what do you want of us? And, you know, and then we'd like to request it of you, so that it was the two things. So we didn't just nominate it. And the other thing we did was we never paid them for housework. We never got into that little malarkey, because it was like, we're not going to tie your pocket money to your chore, because your chores, they need to be done anyway. Pocket money is a different conversation. You're not getting paid to do that. So, I mean, let's face it, unless you're a cleaner, nobody gets paid to do any housework in this country. So, you know, why should the children get paid? Why should the children get paid to do housework?
Oh, I love that. We've just recently, this year, we started giving pocket money to our two, and to watch how their relationship with money has changed, it's brilliant. And you don't actually have to teach them anything, because they learn through doing, which is obviously the best way to learn. And I just love watching them with their money, and you can see them when they're about to buy something. So, you know, say if we go to a family attraction and they're in the gift shop, the way they decide what they're going to buy and whether they buy something or not to start with is amazing.
Yeah.
And their choices, and the way they make choices, well, it's just they're making, okay, in my opinion,
choices. And some of them you might be thinking, that's not a choice I want you to make. You know, I remember Aaron having this thing about Pokemon cards, and he got some bit of money, and I think he was staying with his dad that weekend, and I remember his dad rang us up and said, can you just talk to Aaron? He wants to buy this Pokemon card on the market and all the rest of it. Can you talk to him? And I was like, so we had this conversation. I said, well, we had this whole thing about, well, it's this, it's that, it's the other. It's quite a lot of money. What do you want to do? How much do you think you're going to value it? And all the rest of it. And at the end of it, Aaron said, but it's my money, isn't it? And I went, yes, Aaron, at the end of the day, it's your money. And if you decide that's what you want to do with it, then buy the card. He bought the card. The next day he swapped it with somebody else. You know, it's just like, and the money was gone. But, you know, he got there in the end. But it's like, how can you actually expect people will learn anything if you don't give them responsibility? It's like, you wouldn't be able to trust them to cross the road, would you? You'd have to follow them along with everything. No, let's not do that. So you have to give them the tools. You do, to be able to make those decisions.
You do. Now, I want to ask you, I want to go down two routes. The first one you just threw in, and I need to follow it, but I want to talk to you more about how being a mum has changed as your children have grown up. But before we talk about that, I want to ask you, because you just slipped into the conversation, you didn't always want to be a mum?
No, I was completely convinced. There was nothing I wanted to do. Why would you want to do that? And I remember people saying, no, you'll change your mind. You just think, oh yeah, right, ha ha ha. So I think it just started, the old hormones started twanging in about, I'd say 27, 28. And yeah, it's quite an interesting thing. When you have lived your life in the basis of, you've made the decisions, you've chosen your career, you've got jobs, you've moved, you've got married or not, whatever it is, based on your intellect, and suddenly your body's going, hello, same thing when I got to menopause, and it was really interesting because it was early 40s, that right. So of course, met my third husband. We don't have children together, and then everybody's going to say, are you going to have children together? And I'm going, well, I've got two already. And it was like this whole thing, this expectation that you would have children with the next partner. And then at some point, I think I was about 43, 44, and I suddenly got this absolute, I want to have one and I want to have another one. And I kind of remember actually saying to God at some point, I'd like to have your baby. And he go, oh, that's nice. He was great. And I spoke to another woman, a friend of mine, and she kind of went, yeah, it's the last ditch attempt. If you just ignore it for 6 months, it goes away. Because it's the last thing where your hormones are going, quick, before we run out, you better have another one, quick now. And you just kind of think, no, just hang on. And it did. It went away after 6 months. It was quite weird.
So do you think it's genuinely a hormone thing in both circumstances then?
Yeah, well, I think those were definitely that. And I kind of think that, but I'm actually grateful for that hormonal change that said, you want to have children. It became absolutely vital that I did it. Because the children are great. They're great. And actually having children, it's a learning. I mean, gosh, you're going to learn so much about yourself, about everybody else. You're going to, you have all of those different things. It's really creative, and productive, and you get to have those kind of conversations. Of course, it's easier before they're talking. That's good, isn't it, really? And then they start to talk and then they're arguing with you. That's very annoying. But it is that whole thing of, and this is kind of one of the questions you sent me about what did you think, what I wish I knew. And it's like, everybody can imagine the bad things. Everybody tells you about the sleepless nights, the this, the that, all of the different things that are going to happen. You're going to be a complete slave. Well, obviously I'm not, to your children, all of these different things. And you're never going to have sex again in your life, whatever it is. But they don't tell you about the good things. And they don't tell you about that little, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? It never goes away. That little kind of, you have that particular relationship and that emotion for another person that is unlike anything else, and is that kind of constant. And they're independent as soon as you cut the cord, but it's an amazing process to kind of follow them as they get older, and each age has its own fascinations and advantages and disadvantages. That's for true.
So talk to me then about how being a mum has changed as your children have got older.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, having Aaron and being 33 and all that kind of stuff, thinking that my life was sorted, and then suddenly this complete off comes in and you have to rethink everything. But yeah, and there's a bit of panic, am I going to do it right? I love the fact they made you do this thing and they called it parenthood at the hospital, where they got you in when you were still pregnant, the rest of it. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, I said, do we fail this? Do we not get to take the baby home or something? But it was all of these different things you have to think of, and there isn't really a manual. I mean, there's loads of books written about it, and there's lots of people who've had different ideas about how do you bring them up, how do you not bring them up. But then you have to realize that you have to look at this from your own point of view. What are you doing? So everybody can tell you these things, but you're going to experience it. So the experience is totally different from what anybody has ever told you. And so when I've got this, when they were young, panic, safety, are they going to be safe? My god. And then they, when they're crawling, you don't really know how lucky you are. And then suddenly they're walking. Oh no, bad idea. So they're so quick. So then you can worry about that. So, and then they kind of go on, and they go to, and then you think, oh, thank God for school, you know, because they can go and be at school and I don't have to worry about them for that part of the day. So then they kind of come home and do that, and then they get into teens, you know, and all of that kind of stuff. I think, you know, my son, his teenage, he was okay. My daughter's teenage, there's a lot of hormones going around the house at that point. There was a lot of door slamming at many times. And then you know, and then she went traveling. Panic, safety, you know, that's how I got onto Facebook, so I could stalk around Southeast Asia, you know, so it never goes away. I mean, she's an adult, but off she went, you know, and did her own thing. And now, you know, one's in their 20s, one's in their 30s, and it's just like there's still a bit of a, are they safe, are they all right? So they're always there, but as I said, going on holiday with the two of them as adults was a great experience for us, and having different conversations about, you know, life and the meaning of life and everything, and sharing different things with them, you know. And you know, it is Ella's got me into watching RuPaul's Drag Race and things like that, so we can, every so often she'll get me tickets to a drag show in London, and off we go, you know, and we have those kind of conversations. And they both got into watching Stranger Things, so we went off and did the secret cinema Stranger Things together. Rod didn't come because it wasn't his thing, so it's like you kind of match at different times. And then there's other things where you kind of think, how can you possibly like that music? Ugh, you know, so it is kind of, it does change, but it's always there. It's always there. It's nice that they are not living in my house and that they're earning their own money, and that, you know, you see them from time to time. They are rubbish at communication, you know. Every so often I've got to go, you know, hello, I'm still here. Are you still alive? Oh yes, I am. Thank you. Right. But yeah, so it is like, and then learning that they're actually going to have their own lives, and at some point somebody else is going to be more important to them than you are. And then you realize you understand your own parents, you know. Why did my mother want me when I was at university? I had to queue for the phone box on a Friday night so I could have a conversation with them, you know, for like 5 minutes with my 10p piece before I went to the bar. You know, why on earth, you know? So why are they bothering me? But then you realize the other way around when you have your own children. So
it's funny, isn't it? It's not until you walk in similar shoes that you're like, oh, I get it now. I now understand.
Yeah.
So in, let's say, the 30 years of being, well, over 30 years of being a mum, sorry, what is the most challenging time?
Yes, I think there are little pockets. I think 9 is a horrible age. It's
My
horrible.
daughter is 9.
Horrible, horrible. Because, you know, that's the first inkling you get that they know everything. They know everything and you know nothing. You know, and they can just look at you like, you know. So I found 9 was like, and then I think, yeah, university age was interesting. I would say that was challenging in different ways, because they're really they're learning how to operate independently completely, and they're doing all those different things when they leave home for the first time, I would say, because sometimes they come back. You have to worry about that. So when they leave home for the first time, so then there's a bit of stuff going on, because it's your own stuff, you know. They don't need me anymore, but then every so often there'll be a phone call, you know, this has happened, you know, money's not working, this isn't working, I've got to move, whatever. So that can be, because then you're doing it at a distance. So that kind of feels kind of interesting. And then there are always those moments, you know, when they change, when they lose their job, when they change their job, you know, when you kind of think, oh my God, they're not gonna be able to pay their rent. So there is those kind of moments. But you know, once they're, well, we keep thinking they're launched, and then they just keep coming back, and then you're going, they're launched. But it's quite nice to be asked. But the challenges are different. But I would say those are the main things. 9, I didn't enjoy 9 at all. And that, you know, that leaving home, university, and of course, because my kids were born 6 years apart, I just recovered from one lot of it, and then the next stuff started, you know.
Oh my goodness, yeah, thanks. Yeah, 9 is interesting. 9 is definitely interesting. So believe it or not, Alison, we are actually coming close to the end of our episode. But I have 2 questions for you before we go. The first one is, what 3 things would you like our listeners to take away from our conversation?
Well, I would say, make sure you tell your children the truth, whatever it is. How do you expect them to tell you the truth if you don't tell them the truth? And that isn't even down to, are you going to read me a bedtime story later? No, whatever it is, because you know what we say. We always want to be nice. Yes, fine, maybe, okay. No, you just might be saying, you know, I'm sorry, I'm a bit busy, I'm a bit tired, it's not going to happen tonight, you know, whatever it is. I think don't be their servant. Don't be their servant is that thing. Make them part of the team. Make them, you know, part of the team. And also, I would say we've all been there before. We've all been there before. So if you're finding it difficult, if things are overwhelming, we have all been there before. I mean, you know, the whole point when I was going through this period of single parenthood, and I was absolutely bonkers. And I remember ringing up the counselling service, and I remember having a conversation with this woman, and she was like going, oh yeah, you know, we're very, you know, and we've got a 6-week waiting list. And I'm going, okay. And she said, can you tell me a bit about the situation? So I don't know what I said, but I described the situation. She kind of went, I can fit you in tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'm just like, okay. So it was like, ask for help. So whatever it is, somebody, you know, we have all been there. We have all been there before. So don't feel you have to suffer in silence. That's the most important thing. Tell somebody.
Yes, communication is the key.
Yeah.
Oh, Alison, I've loved talking to you. Mind you, I always love talking to you. We always have a great conversation. Oh,
I've got one tiny bit. Best piece of advice anybody ever gave me was trust your neurosis. Because being an older mother, what happened, you know what the baby does? It has a temperature which is kind of off the scale. And I'd panicked, obviously, and I rang the out-of-duty doctor, and the out-of-duty doctor arrived. And, you know, of course, by the time the doctor arrives, child is fine, giggling, hello, oh, it's quite nice to be up at this time, you know, all that kind of stuff. And the doctor kind of said to me, he said, hey, how old are you? And I went, you know, 33. And he went, first child? And I went, yes. And I could see him thinking, neurotic mother. And I told this story to a friend of mine, and she went, trust your neurosis. It may have been meningitis. And you know what? Actually, that's their job to come and look at it. So if you feel something's not right, it's probably not right. So don't be put off by somebody telling you, or you feeling that you're going to make a nuisance of yourself.
Yeah.
You've got permission to be a nuisance of yourself now, and trust your neurosis. So I think just, you know, hold on to that one.
I would totally agree with you. It's just, it's mother's instinct, and listen to it, because it's better for you to be proven wrong than for you not to do it and then go, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so Alison, before I say goodbye to you, our listeners will have loved this conversation, and they'll be going, I need to be in Alison's world. Okay. Make it easy for them. Help us by telling us how we can connect with you.
Great. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, guys, so that's probably the best place to find me. Just Alison Theaker. I think the photo even looks like me now. It's quite good. Yeah, the other thing is our website is livelifeforme.org. And that's where we've got all the resources about menopause. And I would say for those of you that are younger, you know, start planning for a great menopause, because it is possible, and information is power, guys.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you very much again, Alison, for joining me today. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Brilliant to talk to you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode. And if you did, then of course, please share it with other mums. I have lots more resources for you that will help you on your journey through life. Just visit my website to access them, which is mummyonabreak.co.uk. You can also find out details about my book, Busy. Take care and see you the next time.